Hi everyone, Armoured Pants here, and I have another review for you in a Russian line. This is the Tier 8 IS-5 Premium Tank, and we have a complete guide for you looking at every aspect of this tank, starting with the tech spec, and we will look at that using blitzhanger.com, as always a great asset for all blitzers. Now this is a good, solid, balanced heavy tank. Gun, armour, agility, it's really good, I like it. And it's a blitz tank for blitzers, and it's good to have in your garage. Why is a blitz tank for blitzers? Because it's a reward for loyalty, for clan loyalty and for player loyalty. 122mm gun on it, 11.79 second reload, which is good, better than IS-3. 221mm of pen with APCR, 270mm with heat, and 61mm with HE if you run gun rammer, which I do because I like to have the faster reload because it's a big gun anyway. Muzzle velocity is high, higher than the IS-3. With APCR it's 1400 meters per second, which goes up to 1820 meters per second with supercharger, which is one of the best in tier 8. Muzzle velocity is not equal though. Heat has lower muzzle velocity, as does HE. There's an 80% difference in the muzzle velocity between your Pramo and your normal APCR rounds. So therefore that's 800 meters per second. What does that mean? Well, it means if you're firing at a target 400 meters away, he's an extra half a second to move, which means deflection shooting is more difficult, so you need to manage your shells. You'll fire less while moving with a heavy, therefore I would use refined gun rather than vertical stabilizer. Credit coefficient of this tank is good, 175%, 11th in its tier, and it's the best in tier is the Super Pershing at 190%, so it's not that far behind, so it's a good credit earner. It's a fast tank, it does 42 kilometers per hour, which is pretty good. It's faster than the IS-3, it's Tech 3 equivalent. It has good power to weight ratio as well, it's good traverse, so this is a tough brawler. This is not a tank you want to get into a brawl with on your own. Decent concealment numbers for a heavy too. At 304 meter view range, the spotter needs to come within 267 meters of you. So obviously it's not great, it's not like a medium or light tank, but for a heavy tank it's pretty good. So all around, this is a good, decent tank. And we haven't even looked at the armour yet. Look at these armour numbers. Ooh, baby. It's like looking at a tomato in a rear view mirror. This thing is red all over. I mean, look at those relative armour numbers on the top left hand side. It is just a bounce monster. It has spaced armour on the side, so you can't do max damage with HE or heat rounds. They won't go through to full effect on the spaced armour. So it's good defense from that, and you can side scrape. So let's take a time out and have a mini side scraping tutorial, because this tank is all about bouncing and angling and side scraping. So let's have a recap on this, or a tutorial for you guys who haven't, who are not so familiar with it, right? So let's have a look at over angling mechanics and angling mechanics in general. The green is your plate armor. The red is the pen on the shell that's coming, right? So the shell pen, let's say, is 150, your plate armor is 140, so it goes through. The outline box on the other side is the thickness of the armor. We're going to use that for relative comparisons in the next couple of examples. Simple example, right? If armor penetration is 150 millimeters and your shell, the green, and the armor plate, which you're looking at, the green box, is 140, goes through, right? However, if you angle your tank like this, right? Now look at how thick the armor is, right? Look at the original thickness, which is the outline, right? And now look at the shell penetration. It will not go through that armor. So you've only got 140 millimeters of armor. You angle it, and now it's relatively thicker than it originally was. And the 150 millimeters will now no longer go through. It will bounce off. However, if you don't angle correctly, if you angle only slightly, you see, the shell penetration will go through. So you've only increased decreased the likelihood of it going through a small amount. You haven't increased the thickness of the shell enough for it to deflect the shell. Sorry, you haven't increased the thickness of the armor enough for it to deflect the shell coming at you. So therefore you can see that the 150 millimeters of pen still goes through the 140. So this is over angling. You're not angling enough. The previous example is how to angle properly to make sure that you have the proper amount of relative armor facing onto the shell, and you get your bounce. Simple, right? It's basic physics, simple mechanics, right? So let's look at angling mechanics in practice on side scraping, right? You have your armor flat on, as we discussed, 140 millimeters of armor, 150 millimeters of pen shell. It's going to go straight through when you're flat on, right? It's simple physics. One number is bigger or smaller than the other. However, as we discussed, now looking at the angle that we have, right? We look at the outline, which is the original 140 millimeters of armor. We've angled and we've created a thicker piece of armor relatively as the shell comes and it bounces off. Just as the example that we looked at the start, right? Simple. This is how angling works, right? Basic physics, basic mathematics, can't be argued with. You start off with one number and you've just made it bigger. As you can see, you've made the shell plate thicker by angling it. If you do not angle it correctly though, for example, or if the shell is firing at you at a different angle, you can see here, this is why it goes through, right? That the thickness of the armor onto the shell in this example is not thick enough, right? We can see it's not even as thick as it is in its original form, and it goes straight through. Now, side scraping, right? Let's take put a building into this, right? So there's a building in now, right? You come outside on, and then the shell is going to go straight through you, right? So having a building there is absolutely useless. And you see inexperienced players doing this all the time, right? They're in cover and they come out side on and they get smashed. It's simple because you're coming out, you're doing nothing to increase your relative armor angles. You're just coming out flat on and the shell goes straight through you and you get the max roll and you get a lot of damage, right? And you see inexperienced players doing this all the time. They're behind cover, behind the house, they roll out straight on, have their armor flat to the enemy, get smashed, even if they're in a big heavy tank. However, this is how you do it. This is how you side scrape. You use the building to create a really acute angle that the shell can't go through. Now look at the armor relative to the shell being fired at it. All right. So let's say you are at a perpendicular angle to the house. You back out. Now look how thick your armor is compared to when you're flat on. Look at the outline, which shows the original thickness of the armor. Now look at it, right? You are almost 3 times as thick. So instead of having 140 millimeters of armor, you now have something like 400 or 500 of relative armor, and you get a bounce. If you come out even at a more acute angle like this, you still have significantly thicker armor than if you come out flat on, and you get a bounce. And that is how you side scrape. It's side scraping 101. You use the building to hide the vulnerable lower plate of your tank. You come out at an angle that creates armor which is actually relatively thicker than the thickness of your armor. So the thickness of your armor, the 144 millimeters in this example, is represented by the outline, and you can see how thick the plate armor is compared to that. Significantly thicker. Shell with 150 millimeters of pen won't go through it. And that's how side scraping mechanics work, and I hope that tutorial explained it a bit for you. You can see here now, when we look at the angles for side scraping, now hopefully that makes more sense for you. As we said, it also has a spaced armor on the side. That means if you look at the part that doesn't have spaced armor and the tracks, it's very difficult to put a heat or HE round into the side of this tank. Very difficult indeed. And this makes it really strong. Front on, only lower plate is vulnerable, and even then you need a very big gun or pramo to pen it. So when you're going down a hill as you are here, you can see of course you're vulnerable. Going up a hill you're vulnerable, but then so is every tank. But this tank really is an awesome beast of a tank in terms of its armor profile, and it's also really good front on because of the turret. It has a really tough turret. You can't really go hold down because it doesn't have any gun depression, only has 5 degrees. But if you're only showing the turret in this thing, I mean look here, I mean this is just incredible. Look at the front of that against a tier 7. against a tier 8, even against a tier 9 it's almost impossible to pen. As I said, only the lower plate is vulnerable. This tank is a beast, an absolute beast. It's a great heavy tank, quintessential heavy tank, and you know, it's everything you want in a heavy and more. Really, really good tank. I'm not a big fan of the IS Rangers, you know from my other videos, not because there's anything wrong with them, I just find them very boring, and I really don't like the IS-6 because I started playing it when I didn't know how to play and I used to get smashed in all the time. But I have to say, I do like this IS-5, it is a very, very good tank, and if you love playing heavies, you're going to love this. In terms of tactics, this is your quintessential heavy tank. It is the tip of the spear, it is used for seizing strategic points on the map. And if you want a reminder of how to do that, watch the heavy tank guide that we have on channel. It's under the heavy tank playlist. Now, IS-5, how to get it? Because it's not available in the store, right? So how do you get it? Well, basically you get it through your clan profile. Now you need to have individual level 10 supply unlocked. So your supply 10 level needs to be unlocked, as you see here. And your personal access, and your clan also needs to have level 10 supply access unlocked. Then it's only 1500 gold, which is only €5.49, which for a tier 8 heavy is absolutely nothing, especially one as good as this. So you see here how you acquire it, you buy it. My clan has supply level 10 unlocked, and I have personal supply level 10 unlocked. Now I'm gonna unlock all of the equipment. Don't worry about what I have selected here. I'm gonna go back and fix that later. I'm just unlocking them now. Now here's a tip for you, by the way. If you're not in a clan, or your clan doesn't have tier 9 supply level unlocked, but you have personal supply level unlocked, you can join a clan for an hour, get the tank, and then it stays in your garage if you leave. So if you're friendly with somebody in the clan and get you in, that's how to get it if you're your own clan, or if you're not in a clan. So get friendly with somebody in a clan that has supply level 10 unlocked. As long as you have your own individual supply level unlocked, you can go in even for 5 minutes, buy it, come back out, give back the space back, and get your IS-5, and it stays in your garage. Now I picked the Guardian legendary camo for this because it's only another €5, and why not? Because this is a tank that you're going to keep in your garage. It's a collectible tank, so why not? It's only an extra €5, right? And it looks great in this legendary camo. So there are provisions. I actually used the condensed milk to get better view range, but in this tank the view range is not such a significant factor because it's a heavy tank, but I want to have the faster reload which the condensed milk gives, because I like firing as often as possible. Now we're going to go back and fix the equipment after we did our shell loadout. So I use gun rammer because as a big gun it's going to pen anyway. I use supercharge, and I use a refined gun to make sure that I have as much chance of penning as often as possible while having as fast a reload as possible. Now this is my very first game in this tank, so let's roll it out. It's Canal, it's a supremacy game, and this is a game I lose, by the way, so my first game, and it was a loss, but nonetheless I enjoyed it and I liked playing this tank. Now one thing about the tank which I don't like, but it's not particularly this tank, is that heat is your pramo. I don't like having heat as pramo. It's not as good as having APCR as your pramo. Why? Well, heat and HE are not pushed through rounds. What does that mean? Well, it means that they detonate on impact, the first thing they impact. So that means you can't fire through wooden structures, you can't fire through basically anything. Also it means they won't go through spaced armour to maximum effect, as we discussed when we looked at the armour profile in this tank. And therefore I don't like when heat is my pramo. I prefer to have a PCR because I often fire through structures, and also when you are playing in higher tiers, you're playing against tanks that have spaced armor. Most of the IS range, for example, has spaced armor, and you can't fire your pramo through the spaced armor to maximum effect because it detonates when it hits the first sheet of armor, and then you only get minimum amount of damage, if you get any damage at all, on the main body of the tank. But that's a minor drawback, I think, right? You know, it's not the tank's fault, and as I said, this is not particularly a problem with this tank. It is just a problem in general when you have heat as promo. So I went to captured B there. I did exactly what a heavy tank should do. As I said, heavy tank, particularly one like this, its job is to seize strategic points on the map, right? Here we see the supercharge in action. Bam, straight through. See how quickly the shell travels. Nice round, straight through. Now in this tank, in this game, by the way, my teammates just drop like flies. 1 minute they're all there, the next minute they're all gone. I don't know what happened to them, I don't know what they were doing. It seemed I was fighting the entire battle on my own. Now I seized B, so I went, seized a strategic position on the map in the heavy tank, which is what you should do. Tried to anchor the team there, but we were getting flanked towards A, so I decided to move. I was trying to capture C, but unfortunately ran into a lot of the enemy there and couldn't. But I've come around on a kind of semi-flank because this tank is maneuverable. It's very maneuverable from a heavy tank, I have to say. You know, it does that 42 kilometers an hour as well, so, and has good power to weight ratio too. So it's not sluggish at all, this tank. You see there the refined gun and the supercharge in action, and you see there the bounce off that really strong turret. I'm going to put a round right up the butt now of the Tiger. Get another bounce off the T-43. Now I understand he does have a low caliber gun, but you know, he's just not able to pen me. I front onto him, I'm giving him angles all the time. He's just looking at a big red tomato. He just can't pen. He just, you know, and I backed up so he couldn't get around behind me, and I just able to take him off. Now, as I said, you know, my team just dropped like flies, and I don't know how, because I was kind of engaged in 3 there. I don't know what they were doing. They just all just disappeared. Like I mean, our butterflies that had longer life expectancy than my teammates. I'm trying to engage, but it's 1 against 4, and also they have me on both sides. And as we discussed before on channel, if you are in a situation like this, it doesn't matter what skills you have or how good of a player you are. You can only face your strong armour in one direction. You can only face your gun in one direction. And if you're surrounded on different sides, you're going to take damage. I'm sorry, it's just basic physics. There's no way you can get out of not taking damage. This is why I always recommend, if you're up against a tank and there's two players, you know, go either side of them. Because, you know, it doesn't matter, there's nothing else you can do. You know, and that big round I took up the ass is what killed me here, when I was trying to move past the Tiger, and unfortunately I just ran out of luck and hit points in the end. But nonetheless, decent game, first class mastery badge in my first game, which is pretty good. 3.3k of damage. And if you look at my team, yeah, as I said, you know, they just, I mean, the Progredo did pretty okay, and the rest of them, I have no idea what they were doing. But you know, I don't mind. I enjoyed the game. I enjoyed playing the tank, I have to say. It was a great way to get it, to play it, and to get accustomed to playing it and its characteristics. And you know, I don't mind losing, because at the end of the day, losing and Blitz is as much part of the game as winning, and you know, you need to accept that. I know, getting a bit zen on you, I know, but some people just don't accept it. They go bananas when they lose, right? It's just fucking mental, right? I mean, it's a game, you're going to lose. If you think about it, right, logically, every single Blitz game, 7 people win, 7 people lose, right? So, you know, it's simple. And even if you run a 70% win rate, right, which, you know, let's say you're a super unicorn player with a 70% win rate, every 10 games you play, you still lose 3, right? So I don't get these people to go bananas when they lose. I mean, I don't mind losing it, you know, and often you learn a lot from when you lose. In fact, you probably learn more when you lose than when you win, if you take it philosophically and try to learn from your mistakes and what your team and you did wrong. If you go off on one and start blaming everybody on the planet and calling them noobs, and then, you know, all the toxic stuff you get, which is a lot of over Christmas, which I'll discuss in another video, you know, then you're never going to get better, you're never going to improve, and you're also probably going to give yourself a heart attack or a brain hemorrhage. Anyway, this is my 11th game in the tank, and It took me 11 games and I mastered it. So yeah, so pretty good return, I think. 11 games to get a mastery badge in a new tank, I think is pretty good. And yeah, I really enjoyed playing this tank, I have to say. I thought it was really good. Now I'm into a side-scraping position here. There's absolutely no way anything's going to pen me when I'm at this angle here. I'm looking for some shots, just rolling backwards. Now, this KV4 here behind me, I'm not losing my temper with anything, but he's doing everything wrong, right? Firstly, he's blocking me from side scraping, right? I can't go back far enough to get a shot off, right? And secondly, he's going out flat on to the enemy. So, look, he's probably an inexperienced player or whatever. Like, I'm not gonna, as I say, I don't say things to people during the game. I just don't see the point of it. The only thing I communicate is what I'm doing, where I'm going, and try to help the team. But try to learn from, that's a good example of what not to do. Again, slow this down for you just so you can see that bounce from the Tiger too. Just how good the armor it is in this thing. I wasn't even particularly angling the tank very well there. I went out to clear off the AMX. Don't know what I was trying to do there. I thought maybe the heat might go through. I honestly don't know what I was trying to do there with the Tiger. And I took a round for my troubles. Now, this is what we mean about angling. If that Tiger had stayed as he was, there's no way I would have been able to take him out. But you saw when he moved and changed the aspect of his angles to me, his armor profile changed completely, and he went from being unpennable, even with my Pramo, to being easily pennable. Nice HE roll here on the Waffle Tractor. It's a big tier 9 gun. And I actually came out to try to ram him, but he's trying to escape and we clear him off. And I was getting penned there from the side and back. The Indian Panzer was doing the right thing. He was trying to put as many rounds into me as he could while I was engaged. Again, going back to the old adage that we said, you can only be facing and firing in one direction. Indian Panzer had me in a crossfire and flanked. But now that I'm front onto him, look at the difference. Now, see the angle I've put myself at? Remember back to our tech spec and our discussion on side scraping? See the angle I've presented to him? There's no way he's going to pen. Like a gun depression, there you go, fluff that shot. But I'm going to push down on him and look again. Look at the angle I'm giving him. There's no way he's going to pen. Bam. See the difference there between when I'm able to angle onto him and create those high relative armor numbers compared to when he had me at the back and sides. And that's the difference, right? This is where you always need to be front on and angling with a tank like this. Mastery game, you can see way less damage, 1000 less damage than the previous game, but it's about base capture, bouncing, spotting, etc. That's what gives you mastery badges. It's XP. It's not about damage. Damage is only one contributing factor to mastery badges. We've discussed that many times before on channel. So that's the IS-5 mastered, 11 games. I think it was my 11th game. So we are very pleased with that and very pleased with the tank. I think it's a great tank. I think also it's great value for money. It's €549, right? An extra €5 gets you the Guardian camo, so it's great value for money and it's a great tank. It really is an excellent heavy tank, well balanced, has everything you need, and it is quintessential heavy tank. Watch the heavy tank guide to see how to utilize this tank to its maximum effect, because this is good at all the heavy tank basics. It has excellent armor, can side scrape front and back. You're going to get bounces, you're going to get steel walls in this tank, no problem. 122mm gun is good. It's better than its Tech 3 cousin, the IS-3. Good pen numbers. Reload is also better than the IS-3, which is over 12 seconds. It's 11.79 seconds. And it's just well balanced tank. It's solid at everything. It's mobile, great armor, good gun, decent good handling, good muzzle velocity. With supercharged, it's the best in its category. And to play it well, you need to angle this tank. You're going to get bounces if you do. Play this tank as a frontline heavy. That's its job. Even if you're up tiered, it can do it, as you saw in that game. I would use supercharged and refined gun on this, and I would use gun rammer. But that's my personal preference. You can fiddle around with that to suit your own
because
gameplay.
the gun is patchy.
This tank is forgiving too.
But this tank is forgiving, as we said many times. So use as a hammer,
and it will
go for line play for your team.
Forgive
if you move angle and maximize
those relative armor numbers. You saw when we looked at the armor,
and you'll be able to
absorb
a lot
massive
of potential damage and help your team and yourself.
When you're starting to play this tank front on, you need to have it front line
because it's forgiving and allows you to make some mistakes. When you get more comfortable with it, you can do fancy maneuvers, as I did in False Creek, like doing the mini.
As a premium tank, its credit coefficient is very good.
The music was Wagner for the Valkyries in the first game, and the second one was
whole tier.
But
you know, it's only 15% less than the best in tier, the Super Persian. Now the music you listen to was Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture.
So cheers, Mush. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful.
Game was
I guess all remains for me to say
Capulets from his Romeo and Juliet ballet. So cheers, Mush. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it enjoyable. And now I guess all that remains for me to say is pants off.